Evening, Gromit!
Welcome back, one and all! I just wanted to say thank you all for the support on the Manga Insects video. I wasn't expecting it to blow up like that, and it means a lot to see it do well. And as you guys made very clear in that video, you were not only open to the idea of a Manga Insects video, but wanted to see it. So here we are! Though it is going to be a bit different than the previous video. With that one, I went through all 6 series and talked about all of the insect support found in them, which worked fine because all 6 series had insect support. But not only do all the mangas not have insect support this time, but not all the series got manga adaptations. Reigns never got its own manga, and as far as I can tell, none of the remaining Arc 5 cards are insect related. So that just leaves the first 4 series to look at. And you'd think that means we'll have fewer cards to look at, but trust me, it's more than you think. As a reminder, I'm only looking at insect cards and cards that have insect related effects. Cards that are thematically insect related but don't have effects involving insects won't be included in this video. However, I'm going to do something a bit different this time. In the previous video, I gave each card its own talking point, which made sense since any of them could be printed at any time. And while that is true for these cards, frequently what will happen in the manga is they'll combine some spell and trap effects with the monsters that get printed, rather than printing the back row itself. So, in cases where I think certain insect-related spells and traps would work better as part of a monster effect, I'll talk about that card earlier in the video rather than waiting for the spell and trap segment to do so. Just feel it'll flow a lot better this way. With all that said, let's look at all the insects once more.
And get a load of this page! R!
We'll be kicking this segment off a bit differently from last time, as when it comes to DM, we don't actually have that many cards Weevil's missing compared to the anime. The only insect related one he's missing being Soldier Ant, which I covered in the previous video, so we're skipping it here. We do, however, have the spin-off mid-roll Yu-Gi-Oh! R to talk about, which had 2 insect users who both dueled Joey Wheeler. Which brings us to a card that is kinda weird to talk about, Antlion. It's a level 4 with 1500 attack, and its only effect is that a monster that attacks it loses 500 attack. Not the most interesting effect, so what's weird to talk about it? Well, back in 2022, Konami released some insect support in Photon Hypernova, including a card called Infinite Antlion. With the other 3 cards connected to it being retrains of older insect cards, people quickly figured out this was a retrain of the manga card Antlion because, well, there isn't any other card it could be a retrain of. So naturally I expected Antlion to be released in that year's premium pack to go along with it. But instead we got the Mantis cards, which did excite me as I've been waiting literal decades for Guard Mantis to be printed, but was also confused as to why Antlion wasn't released. This is further compiled by the fact that the new support is equip focused, and in the duel where Antlion was used, it had equips put on it. Maybe they felt it would have been redundant to have 2 equip based Antlion cards released around the same time? Regardless, Antlion doesn't offer much when it comes to its current effect, which brings me to one of my favorite parts when it comes to talking about the manga cards, analyzing how they were used in the duel and figuring out how they can be changed. And through this, we see 2 interesting things that will likely be done with it. The first is that it was equipped with insect armor with laser cannon. Okay, that may not seem like a major thing, but this guy used only 4 cards. The second thing is that it was being boosted by a spell card called Double Evolution, which doubles the powers of any equipped spells on a monster. Since Antlion has a focus on being equipped with cards, I think a fitting effect for it would be to, upon summon, equip a spell card that can only be equipped to an insect, or an insect that can equip itself, to Antlion, and any bonuses it gets from the equips are doubled. Making it only able to equip insect related stuff would make it so you wouldn't be able to use it to cheat out any busted generic equip spells, while potentially giving use to some bad insect equips, and even giving reason to print some of the anime only ones that I talked about previously. The monster equip effect is a bit more limited though, as currently there's only 6 targets for it, 4 of which need specific monsters to be equipped to. Out of all the cards, I'd say Bio Insect Armor would probably be the best one, since not only would it turn Antlion into a 4500 attacker thanks to its doubled boost, but Bio Insect Armor doesn't banish itself or the user if it's equipped by an outside effect. So it could then be equipped to another thing if it leaves the field. That being said, I'm not sure how playable this would be. The other art card is Mantis Egg, which during your standby phase summons this adorable baby mantis token to your side of the field. If this effect sounds familiar, that's because it's one of the 3 effects that was given to Praying Mantis, and subsequently is the one that comes up the least. In some aspects, it could be considered better since it being on a field spell means it'll remain on the field so its effect actually goes off, while Praying Mantis is mainly dumped with Resonance Insects so you can extend further. But on the other hand, insects don't have a way to search this, and it'd be competing with B-Trooper Formation for the Field Spell Zone, a card that is searchable. Maybe it'll get some changes that make it better, but I think it's fine as just part of Praying Mantis. The only thing that would make me want it to be printed is the possibility of them printing Baby Mantis Token as a card. This is the real card we need, look at how adorable he is. Now that's all for the official cards we know of, however there's one more card I want to talk about, and that's this thing used by Yuki during his duel with Weevil in the manga. It never appeared in the show, and its ultimate purpose is to give a turn to the deck by monster recovery. There's nothing we know about it, not even its name, we just know that it exists. Really the only reason I brought it up is because I think he's a funny little guy, and I wanted to mention him because of that. Overall, there's not much left specifically to print in DM, and to be honest, I don't think there's much for me to ask for. All I wanted from this growing up was Guard Mantis, and not only has that been printed, it being playable is a massive positive for me. So maybe we won't get any of these cards anytime soon, but personally, I'm content with that.
10 inches medium here. 10 inches medium.
Man, you guys got big cocks.
GX's manga does give a bit more to talk about, which is definitely a nice change of pace compared to its anime, having double the insect support. This is because, unlike the anime, the manga has a major character using them. Though, what may surprise you if you haven't read it, is that the character who uses them is Jesse Anderson. Yeah, he played Insects rather than Crystal Beasts, though most characters use different decks in the manga compared to the anime. In fact, after I finished scripting this, they revealed Light and Darkness Dragon was getting legacy support, so that's kind of funny. Some of Jesse's cards have been printed too, Queen Butterfly Danaeus and Rose Papillion being the main two. And as it turns out, the first card we're going to be looking at is his other Papillion card, White Papillion. It's a level 2 insect monster, and its effect is that it doesn't have one, fuck you. This is the first of a few monsters that we're going to be talking about that has the unfortunate distinction of being a normal monster. So we're going to have to do some creative writing to solve that issue. But sadly, there isn't much to work with. When looking at how it was used in the manga, it just sat on Jesse's field for 2 turns, only contributing by enabling Rose Papillion's effect to attack directly, before getting tributed away for Forbidden Beast Brawn. Which, fun fact, is the reason why Rose Papillion's effect lets you normal summon a high level monster in addition to your normal summon, but doesn't specify it has to be an insect, because it was tributed for a... Actually, I have no idea what these things are supposed to be. The most I could see being added is some effects relating to tribute summoning, since Danaeus has an insanely good effect that is hampered by needing to be tribute summoned to activate it, so making it easier would be a really good idea. An insect that does have an effect though is Needle Honeybee, though it's kinda lackluster. Whenever you take battle damage involving this card, your opponent's monsters lose attack points equal to the damage you took. Aside from the fact that removing this in main phase is an option, needing to take damage to have it reduce a monster's attack is not really something you want, especially when cards like Infinite Allying can destroy things that attack you. You'd rather try to win combat than lose it and get some revenge attack drain in return. If it drained the attack before damage calculations, however, I could see this maybe being better. Oh, and if you're wondering how much it would reduce, in the manga the effect went off twice, reducing the attack of Cyrus's Roid monsters by 300 and 700 each respectively, so adding it up to 1000 would work. Might seem like a bit much to some to have it reduce all monsters' attack by 1000, but that being its only utility is fine in my opinion. Especially since even with that there's better options you can do like nuking the field. I'd also give the effect of Wing Stream, which can prevent the destruction of an insect by reducing its attack by 500. This would be good protection, especially if it was also added to work with effect destruction. Though I think it would need to be changed so it happens as it would be destroyed rather than before, since in the manga it lost 500 before damage calculations. One final thing I want to note about Honeybee is the artwork. Frequently when manga cards are adapted, their artwork is a redrawn version of a manga panel, usually the one it was summoned in. And while I do find their summon panel to be super cute, I actually really hope they go with a redrawn version of its in-universe artwork, where they're pouring out honey. I personally find this one even more adorable, though I kinda know it probably won't happen. Lady Beetle is a level 3 insect and its only effect is that it can't be destroyed in one battle. It's basically a gyroid for insects. Sadly, there's not much else to work with this card, other than it being tributed away to summon Danaeus just like Honeybee, though that does reinforce the idea I mentioned with Papillion of this being a tribute focused deck. I will note with this one though, since it was revived by Danaeus, maybe it could be given a graveyard effect similar to Retaliating Sea and Resonance Insect, since those are the best ones to revive with it. If I had to spitball one, I'd say let this one search a level 3 Wind Insect, since that's what Rose Papillion is. Could also give it a special summon condition, since that would turn Resonance Insect plus Lady Beetle into a 2-card Danaeus. Probably won't be the changes to get, but hey, I figured it'd be useful. The next card we have is this sick-ass motherfucker named Rochi. This badass is a level 4 that, upon destruction, summons a level 3 or lower insect from your deck. Note that it doesn't say destroyed by battle, or by an opponent's card effect. So you can trigger this yourself to summon any of you guys from your deck. This pairs very well with Infinite Antline, which can be summoned by it, then equip Rochi to itself. Then when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can destroy Rochi to destroy it, and use Rochi's effect to float into something like Sting the Poison. It's also not a once per turn, so not only can it die and summon Antline from deck, just to do it again if they attack, but if it was already on Antline from a previous turn, you can summon another Antline from the deck since Antline's effect is a soft once per turn. Though, realistically, Rochi's effect is going to be a once per turn once it gets printed, which is fair. I would also give it Evasion Under Fire's effect, to make it so any battle damage you take from battles involving it is 0. Just feels like the best place to include that effect. The only other thing I feel there is to note about this card is that its Japanese name is Rochikuko, which comes from reversing the 2 syllables for the word cockroach. Which means the direct translation of this card's name is Roachcock. The final insect that Jesse used was Butterfly Fairy, which can be summoned by sacrificing 2 Papillion monsters, which from my understanding isn't a special summon condition since during the duel, Jesse had this in their hand while they had White and Rose on the field, but didn't summon it, despite intending to summon it on his next turn only for those 2 monsters to be tributed away. Or maybe it is actually a special summon condition and the reason it didn't work was because White Papillion isn't actually a Papillion monster in the Japanese version. Regardless, this card doesn't actually do anything as far as I can tell, as its summoning condition is all we know. And it never actually got summoned, so I'm not sure what it will do. I guess I could say that they could make this a special summon condition, but everything I've talked about so far has been relating to tribute summoning insects, and since it was supposed to be tribute summoned in the first place, I think that it's probably gonna stay that way. Maybe it could have a bonus effect if it's tributed using 2 Papillions? For his last 2 cards, Defensive Instinct is a trap that just switches your insect monsters to defense mode. It does trigger stuff like Cicada King and some digital bugs, but I feel like at that point you'd rather run no entry. I guess it could be added to one of these insects as an effect, but honestly I feel Guard Mantis is all you want for an effect like this, so it feels pretty redundant. The last one is Insect Horde, which upon your opponent attacking, summons as many level 3 or lower insects as possible from your graveyard. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain why a Soul Charge effect is really good, even with the specific activation of needing to be attacked. The worst I can say about it is that it only summoning level 3 and lowers misses some really good targets like Resonance Insect and Retaliating Sea, and heck even Rochi. But the fact that you still get some good ones like Antline and Sting the Poison, along with being able to build up a board to come back next turn and prevent you from losing, is still really good. I guess it's also not searchable, which is kind of a bummer, but hey, Thrust is a thing. I guess this could be given the Princess now that I think about it, as an effect that it gains for being tribute summoned, similar to Danaeus. So hey, I guess that's a way we could make her playable. So yeah, GX has some interesting cards that could be printed, and I do think making them more tribute based and allowing for easier tribute summons would be a good idea, since Danaeus is such a good card just waiting for the ability to be broken one day. But until that day comes, all we can do is hope.
Welcome to hell, motherfucker!
Okay, let's get on to it. When I made the first Insects video, one of the main reasons I didn't include the manga support was because of how much the 5Ds manga alone has in it. For reference, the most amount of support that existed for a single anime series was Duel Monsters at 10. The 5Ds manga, meanwhile, has at least 16. And I say at least because, based on how some other cards are counted, it could be as high as 20. Now that's mainly because a major manga exclusive character is Sept, a close friend to Yusei in the manga. However, despite being a major character, very few of his cards have actually been printed. Alongside the 2 BL synchros, we got Armored Bee, Great Poseidon Beetle, and Hell Centipede, the latter of which was translated as 100-Foot Horror. That name change is funnily enough going to cause some issues, as Hell isn't just a random name they gave it, but rather an entire archetype that he used that hasn't been released. The first of those Hell Insects being Mimic Hellworm, a level 1 tuner that can copy the level of an opponent's monster. A tuner that can modulate its level based on an opponent's monster's level isn't something you really want to be relying on, especially when some monsters lack levels. And unfortunately, this card didn't get comboed with anything, aside from a monster I'll talk about in a minute. So there's not a lot to go off for it, but there is a lot that can be done with it, just not sure what direction to go with it other than letting it modulate its own level, similar to Speedroid Red-Eye Dice. Acid Hellfly is a bit weirder, as its effect is to destroy an equip on summon, then steal half of the attack of the monster that had the equip. This one is even more situational than Worm, only working on equip spells. Maybe it could be buffed to destroy any spell or trap card instead, which could give it use with Seraphim Papillion, being able to revive it during the opponent's turn to pop something. Another effect it will likely get is that of reverse damage, which prevents a monster from being destroyed and halves the damage you take, but then deals the rest of the damage to you when that monster leaves the field. Probably not the most useful effect, since you're going to want to use this card as synchro material, but it's most likely the one it'll receive. Hell Needle Caterpillar is a lot simpler since all it does is special summon itself from hand while you control 2 insects. It's a simple extender for insects, with the downside being that it requires more setup compared to other insect extenders. A lot of them special summon themselves if there's only one insect on the field, so Caterpillar is already looking worse from that perspective. The upside though is that Caterpillar is a tuner monster. This means that once you get it onto the field, you can start synchro summoning from there. And there are insect cards that get multiple of them onto the field, like Galaxy Worm and Scout Buggy. What helps is that it's a level 2, meaning that you can go into Excel Stardust, though the use case of doing that is a bit more questionable, since the main reason you would do that would be to make Baron de Fleur, which is now dead in the TCG. Alternatively, you can tune all 3 of them in order to make Deep Atlantis the Menacing Mantis, and use its effect to bin 2 insects from your deck. Or tune one of them with Caterpillar to make Azuna, then tune her with the other one to make Haman, who then gains its double attack effect since it was made with a synchro monster. Though this would also be allowed if it could special summon itself with only 1 insect on the field. An effect it will likely get to make it better would probably be the effect of Hell Fly Nest, which inflicts 200 damage for every insect in your graveyard, which I'm expecting to be applied when it's used as material for a synchro summon. This would add a bit more oomph to the card, while also making it a time card similar to Pin the Bullseye. You could theoretically also use it to FDK by loading up the graveyard, but that would require 40 insects in the graveyard, so I don't think it'd be good for that. Hellgrub is an interesting one to talk about because its power level depends entirely on how its effect would work. Its effect says, when successfully summoned, send 1 Hell monster to the graveyard to special summon a synchro monster which has been summoned previously while negating its effects. Now this can be a really powerful extension tool, being able to revive a synchro monster, which can be then tuned with Grub since it's a tuner. But the main thing to question here is, where is this sending the Hell monster from? It doesn't specify where, and depending on where it does it from, will drastically change how the effect works. And after overlooking the duel it was used in, I can confirm that this card sends it from your hand. Not the worst outcome, but not ideal since it has to send a specific monster to use the effect. Realistically though, I could see this just being changed to be a discard. I could also see it only being able to revive a dark synchro monster like it did in the manga, but that's not too big of an issue. However, how good this card is doesn't really matter because it will never be better than Hell Toxic Moth because it's a moth. Not biased whatsoever. Unfortunately, my praises for this card doesn't carry over to its effect, as all it does is special summon another copy of itself from the hand with its effect negated. While I imagine this effect being changed to summon from deck, I don't really know how much insects will need this card. I mentioned Scout Buggy and Galaxy Worm earlier, and while this would be the exact same effect as them, even down to the level being the same, allowing for the same Synchro and Xyz plays, is that what insects really need? I may be coming off a bit pessimistic here, but Insect Swarm is already very packed with a ton of extenders, so I don't really know if they have room for Scout Buggies 4, 5, and 6. I guess this would be a Scout Buggy you could use earlier in the combo so you don't have to use Scout Buggy for it, meaning you could save it to make Cicada King, which might be enough to justify it. I don't know, it's just not a super interesting card to talk about and might not have room for the be played, so there's not much else to say. Although it is a moth, so that might justify playing it. The last Hell monster we have to talk about is Hell Spider, which ends the battle phase whenever it leaves the field. Dude, this card is ass! Kaboom! This thing will just get answered in the main phase. What is this gonna do? Well, I guess when it comes to its uses and how it could be changed, I should mention Hell Summon, which is a trap card that lets you revive one of your Hell monsters. If Spider had an effect to revive itself when a direct attack is declared, the battle phase end could be a bit more useful since you could prevent an OTK that way. Though it is annoying that currently the main deck you would want an effect like this against is Tenpai, which can just make a synchro that prevents you from activating effects during the battle phase. Only other thing worth mentioning is that if Hellgrub could send one from deck to grave, I guess this would be the best target since none of the other ones have graveyard effects. Now while that's the last Hell insect, we are far from done with the 5Ds insect, as next we have Giant Hades Stag Beetle. Damn! Find me a great stag with them fat tits. No, cut that out. This is a level 7 whose only effect is that it summons Great Beetle Poseidon upon destruction, which is a card that was already printed and was Sek's original boss monster. Unfortunately, neither of these cards are good, and the only passing benefit is being a level 7, meaning you can make Moth. Though, it likely would help to give Hades the effect of Counter-Strike Molt, which, when a monster you control is destroyed, special summons a lower level insect from your hand, as well as Insect Luring Light, which lets you switch a monster on the field from defense to attack, at the cost of it not being able to be destroyed by battle. If the second effect worked on your own monsters and was a quick effect, I could see it being paired with Cicada King to trigger its effect, while also giving Cicada King battle protection. But other than that, it'd still be kind of whatever. And you're definitely not running Poseidon alongside it, unless it triggered whenever it's sent to the graveyard by any means. Then I guess you could dump it in order to just summon a guy for extension. Malevolent Mayfly is a level 1 tuner, and fill in the blanks here. It's another normal monster, but this one's a bit hard to speculate its effects on since it was used in one chapter where Sek used Call of the Hunter to revive Poseidon, so we could then synchro summon BL. Sorry for cutting this one short, but there's not much to work here with this one. Plus we've gone through a bunch already in this segment. Spin Mosquito is another one chapter wonder, being able to send a card from your hand to the graveyard to attack directly. This was what was used to dump Poseidon, by the way. And honestly, given how underwhelming its effect is, I say we just let it dump from deck. Armageddon for insects would be pretty nice. Alternatively, if you want to get fun with these cards, we can make it dump a level 7 or higher insect from your deck to allow an insect to attack directly, or to special summon a Malevolent Mayfly from your deck. Then make Hades' floating effect also trigger when it's sent by a card effect, so bidding it would allow you to summon Poseidon. This might be a bit too much for some combos, so I'd be cool with giving it a synchro lock so you wouldn't be able to tech it into B-Troopers or something, but I think it'd be fine using it in B-Troopers. This will most likely not be what has changed with this card, but hey, it's a fun hypothesis regardless. Hell Gift, meanwhile, is potentially one of the most insane top deck cards that they could possibly print. If it's the only card in your hand, you can draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. However, if you don't summon Hell Monster this turn, you take 3000 damage. Which is such a nothing downside because not only are you going to be trying to summon one during the turn you use this card, taking 3000 isn't going to be enough to kill you, so it's barely a downside. It would be a massive target for negation, but even then, this is such an insanely powerful spell, essentially being Card of Demise without the special summon restriction. I highly doubt this is getting printed anytime soon. Same actually goes for Hell Tuning, though for a very different reason than you may think. It's a quick play that activates when a monster leaves the field, and lets you banish 5 Hell monsters from your graveyard to allow you to synchro summon using that card as material. Performing a synchro summon using a card that left the field is a bit strange to me already, since it doesn't have to leave by an opponent's card effect. But what's even more of a ruling nightmare is the fact that this card was used in the manga to synchro summon with a card that was bounced back to the extra deck. Depending on the situation and how this can be used, I could see this card being insanely busted even with the insane activation cost. Hell Vermin Mine lets you send a Hell monster from your hand to the graveyard to destroy an attacking monster. Let this send from deck, and it'll be fine enough to consider. And finally, Turf, when your opponent special summons a monster, lets you tribute all monsters you control to special summon an insect from your hand. The English translation says from deck, however it's supposed to just be from your hand. Though even if it was from deck, would it really be that good? You're giving up your entire field for a single monster? And even doing so to grab something like a Scary Moth wouldn't be helpful because it triggers when your opponent special summons. Maybe if it tributed a single monster to do it, which wouldn't be too far off since it only tributed one in the manga, then you could use one that had already used its effects or even a token to tag into something like Sting the Poison for a Search and Negate. And that is all for the main cards from 5Ds, but there's 4 more cards I want to talk about, due to one reason or another having a bit of complications. Hammerhead Ant and Hungry Giant Ant are cards that are mentioned in the first volume of 5Ds, but never actually appear. As such, we don't know anything about them other than that they exist, and it's a bit weird to judge whether or not these could even be printed. Orchid Mantis and Orchid Moth, meanwhile, are here for a different reason, as they both appear in a duel, and Mantis even has an effect, which is to discard your entire hand to burn for 500 per card. Moth, meanwhile, has no known effect. The reason why I'm putting them here instead of with the other cards, however, is because I don't know if they're actually insects. As they are based off orchids, I could see them being plants or insects, or potentially cards that synergize with both, similar to Beargram. But as such, I wasn't super confident with putting them earlier in the video, so here they are. And that is every 5D's insect card. Yeah, it shouldn't be hard to see why I thought there were too many to include in the previous video. But even then, it's hard to really think about whether or not these will be getting printed, because most of them are part of the same archetype, but that archetype just has been printed. It'd be like trying to discuss which Armatos Legios cards could be printed when there's like 23 of them. Best we can do is hope we get multiple smaller waves soon. I'm hopeful that maybe one day we'll see them. And finally, we finish off with Zexal, which only has 5 cards, which should make this much quicker than the previous section. Now, that may seem strange to some, as the main villain of the manga, Kyoji Yamuga, I don't fucking know how to pronounce Japanese, I'm so sorry, was known for his Xyz Spider deck. But he only had 3 duels shown, and in one of them he didn't even use any insect cards. Plus a ton of his monsters have already been printed by now, but there is one monster of his that hasn't been printed yet, that being this little jumpy guy known as Rainbow Spider. Rainbow Spider is a level 4 with 1700 attack, and it's a normal monster. Well, it's time to get our theorizing caps on and look at how it was used in the duel. During its duel, it was paired with a card called Spider Hatching, which let him special summon an insect monster from his hand, which is basically a worse version of the Mosquito card that got printed, using it to special summon another copy of itself so he could overlay for number 70. I'm expecting this card to gain some form of Spider Hatching's effect. However, we run into a problem when we just give its effect outright, as that causes it to have overlap with Dragon Bite, which is also a level 4 insect that can summon an insect from hand, but is also a tuner and can banish an insect from the graveyard to modulate its level. Technically, Spider Hatching doesn't have any level restrictions while Dragon Bite only summons 4 or lower, but I'd expect Rainbow Spider not to be able to summon a high level insect since it only summoned a level 4. But that brings me to the other possibility with this card, it instead summoning a second copy of itself from deck, since Hatching summoned a second copy of it. Now hold on, didn't I say Hellmoth having that effect would have been redundant with Scout Buggy and Galaxy Worm? So why is this different? Well, yes, it would be redundant if you're using it as link material. The difference here is that Rainbow Spiders are level 4, while those 3 are all level 3. This means you would have access to an entirely different Xyz lineup, in this case the rank 4 lineup, or at least dark rank 4s, assuming it also has a dark Xyz restriction like the other spiders that were printed. Another change I could see is something to do with rank up Spiderweb, a spell card that detached the material from an Xyz monster to summon an Xyz that was 1 rank higher. What that would be, I'm not sure. Maybe searching in it as an effect it gives to an Xyz monster that's summoned with it, similar to Ascended Sage, or a graveyard banish effect like what Baby Spider has. They would need to print Web as well, but seeing as they've been printing the rest of Koji's cards over the past 2 years, I could see it happening. The other Zexal insect is Beetle Gardener, and oh my god, it's another normal monster. And unfortunately, there's not much to work with this one, as it just got set by Haruto before getting blasted by Galaxy Eyes. You could make an argument that could have an effect based on Memory Oblivion, but I'd say this card left the field before Memory Oblivion was used, so I don't think it'd be fitting. Plus, Titanic Moth's ability to attack directly is already based on Memory Oblivion. Unfortunately, I've got nothing for this guy. Finally, as a quick addendum, a few days after I finished writing this section, Konami revealed the effects for all 3 of the fall subscription cards, which led to me learning that Splitting Planarian is an insect monster. I'm sorry everyone, I wasn't aware Planarians were insects. I failed you all. However, as a result, I should mention the card that this is meant to summon, Shadow Planarian, which is yet another effectless monster that doesn't have much going for it other than immediately being used as Xyz material. Wouldn't be easy to give it an effect either, since Splitting Planarian negates the effects of the monsters it summons. Though given that fact, I'm expecting this to have an effect that is applied when sent to the graveyard or used as Xyz material. That way, it being negated won't be an issue. The final card from Zexal, and the final one for this video, is Phantom Scales, which lets you target an insect you control and special summon one with the same name as that one from your deck. Wow, that's literally the same effect I suggested for Cell Division in the last video, minus the level limitation. And yeah, it'd be as useful as I expected Cell Division to be with that change. Not much else to add other than the idea of maybe having an effect that synergizes with Titanic Moth, which was Haruto's boss monster. Could be something like making the two insects level 7, or something that allows it to deal more damage when attacking directly since its damage is nerfed when it attacks directly, or potentially let it attack twice so you can use the effect twice. And with that, we have covered every single Manga Insect card. So now, which of these could be added to the game? Well, that one's a bit trickier to discuss compared to the anime insects. While a lot of anime insects had effects that would likely need to be changed if they were printed, most of them had a blueprint for how they would work, which allowed them to be improved by minor tweaks, or major overhauls. But with the manga insects, most of the effects either aren't good enough to be solved by just a simple tweak, or they're just flat out effectless. Rochi, Insect Horde, Hell Needle Caterpillar, and maybe Hell Toxic Moth and Rainbow Spider are the ones I could see getting printed with small tweaks, but everything else would likely need bigger changes. And what those changes could be is honestly up in the air because despite me speculating what these effects could be if they get certain cards added to them, that's all I did. Speculate. I made an educated guess based on previous manga releases, but there's no guarantee that's what will happen. Not to mention the quality of these changes vary drastically from card to card. Hades getting the effect that Counter-Strike Molt and Insect Luring Light are way bigger buffs than Honeybee getting Wingstream, for example. This is further complicated by the disparity of how much each series has for support. 5Ds at its lowest is still double the amount that GX has, which is the second highest series, and the GX manga had more insect support than the anime version. Add on to the fact that most of the 5Ds cards were for a single archetype, with 11 out of 16 cards belonging to Hell Insects. Yeah, it's kinda hard to tell which ones can be printed without cutting them, or just straight up not printing them like with Gift and Tune. And combine that with the fact that the manga gets considerably less cards printed a year than the anime, and that's even with the cuts in the releases for the Animation Chronicles. The chances of some of these cards plummet when they have to compete for one of 3 to 4 slots. Do I think these cards will never get released? No, just that it will likely be a while until they do. I'm sorry if this ending is coming off a bit more pessimistic, but that's the current state of things with the manga releases. I doubt we'll see any of these anytime soon unless Konami needs to promote some recent insect support like they did in 2022. But I'm open to these cards getting printed sometime soon. I'm always welcoming to new insect cards, even if they aren't actually good. Regardless, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already, check out the previous video I did on the anime insects. My name is Era, and that is the end of this story.